Hello, geography lovers. Here is another edition of Handy Dandy Geography Study Guide Helper. Today's episode is on climate. Climate is not weather. Weather is what happens on one day. Or maybe you might ask, well, what's the weather tomorrow? But climate is the average weather of a place over time. So it's different from place to place, and it's not the same as weather. There are climate zones in our world. And so we have climate zones that measure the weather basically in relation to the equator. So the latitude of a place affects the climate. The areas that are closest to the equator, right here you can see, are called the Torrid Zone. Torrid is just another word for really, really, really hot. So when you're close to the equator in a location, then the weather is going to be pretty much the same every single day of the year. It's going to be hot every single day of the year. Now, towards the poles, you'll see here towards the North Pole or to the South Pole, these are called the frigid zones. And frigid is just another word for wicked, wicked, wicked cold. So now we have a climate zone in between the torrid or hot zone and the frigid zone called the temperate zone. And temperate is just really a word that means mild. And so that means that those climate areas have seasons. The winter might be cold, the summer might be hot, and the spring and the fall might be warm or cool. So it varies on where you are in the planet in terms of your climate zone. So again, at the equator, we have the torrid zone in this area here. We have at the North Pole and the South Pole the frigid zones, and then we have in the temperate zones here and here. And we happen to live in the temperate zone in New England. Some other things that affect climate would be wind and currents. Ocean currents. So if you are near the ocean, your climate might be different than if you were 45 minutes inland. And altitude affects climate. So let's say that you were along the equator, which we've now learned is in the torrid zone, meaning that it's hot every single day of the year. But you were at the top of a mountain. Well, it wouldn't be hot because as you go up in elevation, there's a decreasing temperature. So if you were on a mountain near the equator in the climate zone called the torrid zone, really hot, and you were up on top of a mountain, it wouldn't necessarily be hot because altitude affects climate. Landforms can also affect climate. It might be one kind of weather pattern on one side of a chain of mountains and a different weather pattern on the opposite side of the mountains. So deserts by nature have very little rainfall. Rainfall would obviously affect that as well. Physical features affect climate. So you've got your study guide, and you can take a look at this at home. Read it, study it, and you can even quiz yourself. And that's all for today's study helper on climate. See you for the next edition.